War has been a persistent thread woven through the tapestry of human history, shaping civilizations, toppling empires, and leaving an indelible mark on the world. Despite the devastation it brings, war continues to erupt in various forms, driven by complex and often interwoven causes. Understanding the roots of war is essential to addressing its recurrence and striving for lasting peace. Political ambitions, economic desires, and cultural divides have all served as tinder for the flames of conflict, each with its unique role in sparking violence and sustaining its momentum. At the heart of many wars lies the struggle for power and ideology. Nations, leaders, or groups often see their way of life as threatened or incompatible with others, leading to a collision of interests that can escalate into warfare. The Cold War is a vivid example of how ideological differences can fuel prolonged hostilities. The United States and the Soviet Union, representing opposing visions of governance and society, became locked in a geopolitical struggle that influenced nearly every corner of the globe. While the two superpowers avoided direct confrontation, their ideological battle led to proxy wars in places like Vietnam and Afghanistan, leaving destruction and deep scars in their wake. Territorial disputes, often fueled by aggressive nationalism, have also been a primary driver of war. Nations seeking to expand their borders or reclaim what they perceive as rightfully theirs have repeatedly plunged into conflict. The two world wars of the 20th century serve as grim reminders of how such ambitions can spiral out of control. Germany's quest for dominance in Europe, driven by nationalist fervor and grievances from World War I, plunged the world into a devastating conflict that claimed millions of lives. Even in modern times, territorial disputes remain a flashpoint for conflict, as seen in the ongoing tensions between India and Pakistan over the region of Kashmir. Economic motivations further complicate the tapestry of war, often serving as both a cause and a consequence of conflict. Nations with limited access to critical resources like oil, water, or fertile land may see military force as the only viable path to securing their survival or prosperity. The Gulf War in 1990 to 1991 is a stark example, where Iraq's invasion of Kuwait was driven by economic grievances and disputes over oil resources. Beyond resource conflicts, economic inequality on a global scale plays a significant role in fostering unrest. Nations burdened by poverty, corruption, and unemployment are more susceptible to internal conflict, which can escalate into regional wars or attract foreign intervention. The social and cultural dimensions of war often exacerbate its severity and make its resolution even more challenging. Ethnic and religious tensions, rooted in historical grievances, have fueled some of the most brutal conflicts in human history. The Rwandan genocide of 1994 is a haunting example of how deep-seated animosities between ethnic groups can erupt into large-scale violence. Religious divides, whether between sects within the same faith or entirely different belief systems, have sparked wars and perpetuated cycles of hatred. These conflicts are not just struggles over land or power, but battles for identity and survival, making them deeply personal and profoundly destructive. Causes of war. 1.1 Political and ideological causes. Political and ideological tensions have been one of the most significant drivers of war throughout history. Nations or groups with conflicting political systems often see each other as existential threats, leading to confrontations. For instance, the Cold War was a prolonged ideological struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union, representing capitalism and communism respectively. Though it avoided direct large-scale conflict, it resulted in numerous proxy wars, such as those in Vietnam and Korea. Similarly, nationalism can exacerbate tensions, especially when one nation seeks to expand its influence or territory at the expense of others. Aggressive nationalism was a central cause of both world wars. Germany's quest for dominance in Europe, fueled by nationalist fervor, led to widespread conflict. Territorial disputes often align with nationalistic aspirations, as seen in the case of the India-Pakistan conflict over Kashmir, where political control and national identity are deeply intertwined. Furthermore, authoritarian regimes may resort to war to suppress dissent or unify their population against a perceived external threat. This tactic distracts from domestic issues while consolidating power. In contrast, democracies, while generally more peaceful, are not immune to engaging in wars if they feel their values are threatened or their interests compromised. The lack of effective international mediation often exacerbates political tensions, turning disputes into full-scale wars. 1.2 Economic causes. Economic motives are another significant cause of wars, often rooted in the competition for resources. Nations with scarce resources may resort to military force to secure access to essentials like oil, gas, water, or fertile land. The Gulf War in 1990 to 1991 exemplifies this, where Iraq's invasion of Kuwait was driven by disputes over oil resources and economic grievances. Trade disputes and economic sanctions can also escalate tensions. For example, Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor during World War II was partially triggered by U.S. trade embargoes, which threatened Japan's economic stability. Historical patterns of imperialism further underscore the role of economic incentives in conflicts. Colonial powers frequently waged wars to expand their empires and control lucrative trade routes or territories rich in natural resources, as seen in the scramble for Africa. Economic inequality on a global scale also plays a role in war. Poorer nations, burdened by unemployment, lack of development, and corruption, are more likely to experience internal conflicts, which can spill over into regional wars. Economic grievances can fuel insurgencies, leading to civil wars, as seen in the resource-rich but impoverished Democratic Republic of Congo. Moreover, wealthy nations may intervene in these conflicts, often under the guise of promoting stability but driven by economic interests. 1.3 Social and cultural causes. Social and cultural factors, including ethnic, religious, and historical grievances, have fueled some of the deadliest conflicts in history. Ethnic tensions, often exacerbated by colonial-era borders that ignored cultural divisions, have led to numerous wars. The Rwandan genocide of 1994 is a stark example, where deep-seated ethnic animosities between the Hutu and Tutsi led to mass violence and eventual international intervention. Religious conflicts, while sometimes intertwined with political and economic issues, have their unique dynamics. Sectarian violence, such as the Sunni-Shia divide in the Middle East, has fueled wars in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Religious extremism, whether state-sponsored or non-state actors like ISIS, can escalate conflicts globally. Historical grievances and unresolved disputes also play a major role. Generational narratives of victimization and injustice, such as those between Israel and Palestine, perpetuate cycles of violence. Cultural misunderstandings or prejudices often magnify these issues, making reconciliation harder. Additionally, propaganda and media manipulation can inflame social tensions, creating an us versus them mentality that justifies war. Solutions to war. 2.1 Diplomatic approaches. Effective diplomacy is critical to preventing and resolving wars. International organizations like the United Nations play a vital role in mediating disputes and fostering dialogue between conflicting parties. For example, UN-brokered ceasefires have been instrumental in de-escalating conflicts in regions like the Middle East and Africa. Preventative diplomacy, which seeks to address tensions before they escalate, is equally important. This involves early warning systems, regular dialogue, and trust-building measures between nations. Bilateral and multilateral treaties can also be effective in reducing the likelihood of war. Arms control agreements, such as the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, START, between the US and Russia, have reduced nuclear stockpiles and lowered the risk of large-scale conflict. Economic interdependence, fostered through trade agreements, can also reduce the incentives for war, as nations are less likely to attack their economic partners. 2.2 Economic and Development Solutions. Addressing economic inequalities and resource distribution can mitigate many causes of war. Investment in education, healthcare, and infrastructure in developing nations can reduce the appeal of insurgencies and armed groups. International aid programs, if properly managed, can support economic stability and development in war-torn regions. Resource-sharing agreements can help prevent conflicts over scarce resources. For instance, water-sharing treaties between nations like India and Pakistan have prevented disputes from escalating into full-scale wars. Promoting economic cooperation through regional organizations, such as the African Union or ASEAN, can foster stability and mutual growth, reducing the likelihood of conflict. 2.3 Cultural and Social Reconciliation. Promoting cultural understanding and reconciliation is vital for resolving conflicts rooted in social and historical grievances. Grassroots initiatives, such as interfaith dialogues or community-building programs, can break down stereotypes and foster trust between groups. Education systems should emphasize the value of diversity and teach histories that acknowledge multiple perspectives rather than glorify one-sided narratives. Transitional justice mechanisms, including truth commissions and reparations, can help societies heal from past conflicts. The South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, for example, played a key role in addressing the legacy of apartheid and fostering national unity. Public apologies and symbolic gestures can also mend relations, as seen when Germany took responsibility for its role in World War II. Media and technology can be harnessed to counter hate speech and promote peace-building narratives. Social media platforms, for instance, can be used to connect individuals across divides and amplify voices advocating for peace. By addressing the root causes of cultural and social tensions, societies can reduce the likelihood of recurring conflicts. 3. Conclusion. In conclusion, war is a complex phenomenon driven by political, economic, social, and cultural factors. Understanding these causes is essential to devising effective solutions. Through diplomacy, economic development, and cultural reconciliation, the cycle of violence can be broken. However, these efforts require the commitment of nations, organizations, and individuals alike. While war has been a persistent part of human history, the tools for peace are equally available, offering hope for a more harmonious future.